Good morning, everyone. How are you doing? I hope you're well. Gosh, I'm back in the UK for a short while, sorting some things out with documentation, finances, etc., before I go off again. And yeah, it's been quite a tough winter. Hence, I'm still wearing a hat. It's not even that it's that particularly cold. It's just this kind of damp mist over everything. So you're constantly having this war on damp, and you never seem to get totally dry and totally warm. It's quite an interesting experience because I haven't experienced like a UK winter for quite some time. Anyway, this week's blog, yeah. So I'm basically kind of I've mentioned this text several times, and I can't stress enough just how important this is in many fields. It's Eric Davis, High Weirdness. And this week I was really, I'm going between reading High Weirdness and the Epstein emails on the Department of Justice's website. So you can well imagine where my head is at right now. I'm kind of in some very strange terrains. But I think that that's all quite valid. And I think, I've been challenged by a lot of what I read in Eric Davis' work, because sometimes I read something and think, oh my gosh, I've been doing that in my research. And now that I see Eric Davis write about it in a certain way, I'm thinking, yeah, maybe I don't need to do that. So actually, I think that's really healthy, is to kind of come up against new ways of looking at certain things. So in particular, I'm referencing here this idea of how this kind of spiritual milieu of like new age thinking kind of impacted academia and other social and cultural institutions, in particular, like this newfound way of like subjectivity or spirituality, as though you are connected to the divine or whatever it is. And I think that's really challenged, because I suddenly thought, well, yes, actually, a lot of what I'm talking about in Mesotopia does resonate with some of the things that Davis is laying out here. And I'm wondering, and it made me really think about this idea of, well, what is the Mesotopia position on this idea of spiritual connection to the divine, or some kind of religious or spiritual side of things. So I've produced this 500-word blog this week. I'll get into it now. Read it. If you've got any comments or questions or that, please leave it underneath the video. So, Mesotopia, against a priestly class. I have a lingering suspicion that every movement, no matter how exploratory or liberatory it begins, eventually generates its own clergy, the people who explain its meaning to the rest of us. Not the berobed incense and lace variety, though give it time, but the interpretive class, the ones who assure you that what you think you're seeing isn't quite what you're seeing. And luckily, they have the key. This caste hasn't vanished. It has simply donned the corporate drag of the professional managerial class. Mesotopia, at least as I understand it, refuses that comfort. If Mesotopia is anything, it is the awkward recognition that the world is real, stubbornly real, but never fully available. Objects exceed us. Systems exceed us. Institutions exceed us. Yet each of us possesses the capacity to make meaning through our encounters with the environments we inhabit. And this is the crucial point. That process does not require a priestly caste to mediate it. Partial revelation is not the same thing as authorized revelation. Okay, and I'm just going to quickly interject there. When we're talking about a priestly caste, very much, this isn't just about kind of religion and spirituality. This is also about social organization, right? The priestly caste in, say, Indian societies, or even like the class system in the UK. I mean, these are all kind of professional classes as well, aren't they? If you think about it, your faith in any kind of political system really is as much a kind of a religious institution as anything else. So I think it's more about who has the ability to speak about and to these certain things. And I think what I've been encountering through kind of cyomatics, where meaning making is kind of an interaction between the mind and the body and the environment of the individual, like we're constantly making sense of our reality through our interaction with our immediate environment. That's actually quite a personal endeavor. And so you kind of get into this idea of, well, does that then kind of align with many of the new age kind of spiritual enlightenment philosophies coming out? And I'm wondering, maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. So I'm not clear on this myself, etc. Anyway, we live in an age addicted to interpretation. Scroll any feed and you'll find someone explaining what the data really means, what the conflict really signifies, and what the text actually implies. It's a lucrative posture. It flatters the explainer and infantilizes the audience. The message is always the same. The real is too complex for you. Leave it to us. Mesotopia pushes back. If meaning happens in the encounter, if it is co-constituted in that charged space between me and what I meet, then no one gets to claim exclusive access to it. The Mesotopian event is democratic in the most unsettling way. It insists that you are already implicated in the making of sense. There is no backstage pass. This is not relativism. The world bites. History happened. Power concentrates. Money moves in very specific directions. But the claim that only a sanctioned cadre can interpret these realities is itself a power move. It is theology dressed up as theory. You see it everywhere. In academia, it appears as jargon that sometimes functions less as precision and more as initiation rite. In activism, where sometimes a deviation from approved vocabulary can feel like heresy. In politics, where technocrats speak as though code and program were sacred texts decipherable only by the ordained. And I'm going to interject there. I think when we talk about this priestly caste, it aligns very much in Western terms with this sort of professional managerial class, right? There seems to be some people who are sanctioned to talk about some things, and we kind of, we basically as individuals or societies, or we collectively kind of bow down to this expert class, who, by the way, have repeatedly shown in recent years that they are not worthy of that, because there are other relationships at play here, as we can see from things like the Epstein emails, where, actually how the institutions claim to function is not how they function, right? So at what point do we then take back the right of speaking back to that and saying, well, it doesn't matter if you're an academic, Noam Chomsky, everything that you're saying about class politics and about the rise of fascism is completely negated when you're spending your free evenings with Jeffrey Epstein and Steve Bannon talking to Woody Allen about whatever you're talking to him about. That then undermines everything you're putting into the public sphere, right? Because that shows that in reality you don't believe any of those things, right? Okay, so that's kind of what I'm getting into with that. Back to the blog. Mesotopia requires a certain slowness, a willingness to dwell in encounter. Each experience is turned through association and intuition as we try to understand the environment in which we find ourselves. Yes, the real withdraws. Yes, structures operate beyond immediate perception, but that does not invalidate lived encounter. It intensifies its importance. The fact that we never grasp the whole does not mean we grasp nothing. It means we work provisionally, relationally, in good faith. A priestly class thrives on the promise of total vision. Mesotopia is content with fragments. There is something profoundly anti-authoritarian about admitting that revelation is always partial. It levels the field. It allows disagreement without excommunication. It acknowledges that I might hear something you don't, and you might notice something I've missed, not because one of us is enlightened, but because we are differently positioned within the same recalcitrant world. The danger, of course, is that Mesotopia itself becomes doctrine, that someone eventually writes the catechism, "Thou shalt interpret thus." I can already hear the conference panels. So let me be clear. This is not a retreat into the political monad, nor a New Age hymn to the sovereign self. We're not isolated atoms floating above our biological or socio-political milieu. Our environments include community, history, institutions, and power. Meaning making happens within those entanglements, not outside them. Nor do I believe in some private enlightenment waiting at the end of sufficient introspection. Mesotopia is not a ladder to ascend above others. It is a reminder that we are already entangled in something that exceeds us, and that none of us owns the veil. No robes, no incense, no vestments, no authorized intermediaries. Just the difficult, ordinary work of meeting a world that will never fully disclose itself, and refusing to let anyone claim exclusive rights to its mystery. As always, Miafka. So once again, this is your blog. I'm just putting some ideas out there. I think that's quite, I haven't really crystallized my thinking in this. This is just kind of an exercise in me hearing it as I put it out there, and thinking through it as I'm going. And yeah, I definitely think there's something really interesting about this tension, again, between the subject and the object. And I think object-oriented ontology really brings up some very interesting and valid questions about that, and which is why I keep returning to it. Because it's kind of like, well, yeah, okay, none of us really understand this world in which we live. None of us, including the people we claim do quite often. There are things that elude them too. And I think that we should, rather than kind of worshipping this priestly class and allowing them to ask all these challenging questions about our reality, I think we should take more of the responsibility on ourselves, and think through, well, what actually is real here? What exceeds my understanding, and how do I function and make meaning in the environment I find myself. Anyway, I'm off to do some things for the weekend. I will put links down below to Weirdness. I've got to go and save my laundry from the washing machine that you've probably heard spinning away in the background and now beeping at me for attention. Anyway, I look forward to speaking with you, and I will I'm going to Margate next week for a conference, so I'll probably drop a little blog from there. And hope you have a great week. Take care. Bye-bye.